Thursday the 10th. Thursday the 10th of November.
Already.
Andy, how long until Christmas? Who knows? Anyone got that clock on their phone?
Month and a bit.
Significant day today, though. The England World Cup squad is announced. So if you're happy with the England World Cup squad, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down emoji. Let us know either way. As people are joining us, like I say every week, it'd be amazing if you could just give us a good evening comment or drop us a like on your post so you know we are loud, so we know you're hearing us loud and clear. Because we're on Facebook tonight. We're in Michael Childs' Facebook, High Wycombe direction, doing all sorts of exciting things up that way. We got Andrew from Slough. We've got Neil. Boom, there he is. Neil Fenning, just straightening up his camera. He is just having a few technical issues in the background, but he is there with us. We're on the YouTube channel. I think we're on my LinkedIn page and we're on the Avocado. So thank you, Andy Mead, for checking in and saying good evening. If everyone else is there, just let us know that you can hear us loud and clear. That'd be awesome. Drop us a like and tag anyone in that you think would benefit from a market update chat, because
frozen as well.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. So we've got a few technical issues tonight by the looks of it. But Andrew, how are you? I'm going to come to you because you're looking clear on my screen.
I'm good. It looks like the Wi-Fi is holding up. It's certainly better than Neil's. But yeah, it's all good. It's a lot of negativity in a place that I don't think is that negative personally. But
so, Mike, we got Andy there talking about negativity in a place that's not negative. We've seen the mortgage update from a couple of our brokers that work with Avocado. What's the lay of the land looking like in the sort of High Wycombe world at the moment from a property point of view?
In the last, since the middle of September, I think house prices here have dropped anything from 6 to 8%. And if they have dropped, if those sellers have moved the price, they've all sold.
Okay.
That's what I've done since September.
So do we think that's a house price drop or a correction on inflated prices from summer or somewhere in the middle?
The nice way of me saying it to people is your house is now worth what it was in 2021. So I think that trading at the start of this year really boosted prices up, inflated it. And whether you want to say there's been a drop or a correction, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, my kind of take on it is I think we were across the country set up for, at the point of the 1st of July 2022, we would have seen a 12-month rolling at about 12% increased at that point if it had carried on for the full 6. So I think that was where we were looking. I think it will have dropped about 6% in the last 6 months when we get to the sort of the 1st of January next year. So overall, I think the figures will probably show a 6% increase in 2022, but in reality, it's very much a tale of two halves. And I guess the real question is what happens next year? Is that just a correction? It plateaus out and the prices just sort of stay at zero next year, or do we see it climb? Andy, I know you talk a lot to different brokers, but mortgage rates, how have they changed since the base rate has gone up to 3% from the convos you're having?
Well, as a generic sort of response, they've all sort of dropped a little bit, haven't they? And I think people that have obviously completed now that have had a lower interest rate from when they applied 6 months ago, and people that are applying for mortgages now as the rates drop, obviously you can just reapply if you've got time to do so. So actually the rates that peaked at the seriously high rate that they were, I'd like to know from a lender's perspective, is there actually many people going through on those rates because they didn't stay that high for that long?
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to Ellen this afternoon about a client of ours, and we were looking at the rates, and I think they were looking at about 5.6 for their 80% loan to value. And the funny thing was, I kind of said to her, a lot of people that are selling and buying that are getting mortgages over the next sort of 3 months, because it takes 12 to 14 weeks for a sale to go through and actually only about 4 weeks to get a mortgage offer. If the rates keep dropping like they're dropping, you might actually see buyers get 2 or 3 mortgage offers per transaction to save themselves a couple of £100 a month. And you can't say anything but, yeah, you know, touche, really, I would have thought. Mike, what do you think?
Play the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen it myself on a house I sold only 3 weeks ago. They've applied for a different mortgage now, different product, because it's come down very quickly.
Neil, you in the house?
Serious.
I am, but it seems like I've got an issue with my internet. So if you ask me a question and I ignore you, it's not because I'm feeling rude. It's because I've just frozen.
I thought we were going into this live chat with your dog on your lap, just as in a frozen image for a minute. It could have been a beautiful thing.
I tried to get on my phone, but it didn't work.
We're talking about the market, obviously, and we're just saying tale of two halves this year. We were talking about mortgage rates, actually, and the fact that mortgage rates are dropping fairly significantly week by week, which is great news, even with the base rate going up. And we said, you know, even in a transaction that takes maybe 12 to 14 weeks, you might see buyers get 2 or 3 different mortgage offers out as rates get cheaper if that carries on. And we wouldn't have a problem with it, really, because it's fair enough, really, I guess.
Yeah, I've said it before. I've just noticed people just being a bit more cautious with it, and then just making sure that they're living by their means. If their rates are changing and they were stretching themselves 3 months ago, then yeah, they're going to take a step back, understandably, but give it a couple of weeks and you might be looking at the same rates again or the same affordability again. So I think once the dust settles, we'll be all right. Think positive.
Yeah. So the update today that I've seen is, as of this morning, if you're looking at buy-to-let deals, Accord are the lender that's dropped their buy-to-let deals today. I think they've dropped rates anywhere from something like 0.2 to about 0.55%, depending on the product. So they've kind of come in and said, right, if you're looking at buy-to-lets, we're back in the game. Here's some good deals, which is great news. Halifax have appealed to first-time buyers this morning, and they've come in with a new batch of first-time buyers or shared ownership buyers or help to buy type purchasing. Anything in that first-time buyer ilk. Halifax have come in with some drops today. I think 0.31% was the best drop that they'd offered. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a mortgage advisor, but that's what I think I saw from the direct Halifax products. Leeds came in and dropped a lot of residential rates by about 0.31, so, you know, sort of 1/3%. And the big ticket ones were NatWest, actually. NatWest, they were dropping some of their stuff fairly significantly. Even one of the products had dropped 0.75%. So I think what we're seeing now is where, if we went 4 weeks ago, all of a sudden everything looked to be 6 something or high 5s. We're now at low 5s, even 5.09, I think is the best deal on the market today. I would hazard a guess that we're not talking next Thursday at 6 o'clock because we've got our group event, but the week after, when we're back, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a 4.99 out there, I reckon. What do you reckon, Mike?
Yeah, I think, well, I spoke to a mortgage broker yesterday who was very confident that throughout the course, the rest of this year, they'll drop down, and then the start of next year, there'll be some real changes, and 4% will be like the norm, if you like, the new norm.
Yeah. It will just sit around that maybe for the majority of next year, I would say.
I think so, because then inflation will come down next year as well. It has to. That's based year on year, isn't it? So that can't keep going up.
Yeah.
And it just, like I think we've all just said, it all just needs to calm down. And I think once a little bit of confidence comes back, I think I'm speaking to 2 different types of buyers at the moment. The panic buyer who thinks it's going to drop by 20%, 30%. Yeah, they're still out viewing. I don't get why they're out viewing. And other people who just sort of, they can see it's priced correctly and they're going for it.
Yeah, I think that panic buyer is always there, murmuring in the background. When there's a bit of negativity, they pipe up. It's a bit like Liverpool fans when they're doing well, you see loads of them, and then they sort of just disappear all of a sudden. Same thing with those kind of doom and gloom buyers. You know, they just sort of pop up and then they disappear. Moles in holes. Andy, what about kind of with the way things are between now and the end of the year? What would you advise someone if they're saying, I've got a 2-bed house, I've got kid on the way, need to move, need a 3-bed. It's a bit expensive, the rates at the moment, but I've got to make the move. What's the advice you'd be giving a client like that at the moment?
If the move is essential and the interest rate is still affordable, then make the move. Because in the scheme of life and the scheme of a 35-year mortgage, a 2, 3, 4, 5-year fixed rate mortgage is only a very small percentage of that. So make the move if you can afford to, obviously. And the interest rate is irrelevant as long as you can afford it. In 3 years' time, when they drop back down to whatever the norm is, you just refinance the mortgage. It's not for the duration. It's just for whatever the fixed term is. And I think people are sort of losing sight of that. You know, if you've got a 30-year mortgage, you're not paying 5.5% for 30 years. You're paying it for a fixed rate term, and then you refinance. And if you can get yourself a flexible deal, which is a low redemption or, you know, a 2-year fix instead of a 5-year fix to give you the flexibility, then make the move. You can't pause your lives forever. If you've got a kid on the way and you fix your mortgage for 3 years, the kid's going to be 3. You know, you're going to be stuck in your 2-bed still for 3 years.
And also, I guess one of the key things is it's still cheaper to get a mortgage than it is to rent the equivalent property at the moment, unless maybe you're getting a 95% loan to value or something like that, I think. Is there any particular properties, Neil, that have really dropped in demand? You know, anything sells at the right money, of course, but is there any particular part of the market which all of a sudden has really kind of seen a drop away of buyers, or is everything kind of more or less the same? That's to you, Neil.
He's gone.
Yeah, I froze there for a little bit. If I'm right, your question was about properties. What's sort of hot topic at the moment, property-wise?
Yeah, or the opposite as well. What's hot topic and what's cooled off?
I think so. 2 months ago, 3 beds we could sell with our eyes closed. It was the bread and butter, wasn't it? 3 and 4 beds. I'd say the 4-bed market is still quite hot because people are still moving within the market, so it's all relevant and relative. If their price goes up or down, they're not too fussed. But I would say definitely the 3-bed market, especially around here, Shinfield, 3 Mile Cross, Spencer's Wood. There was a lot of activity of 3 beds for quite a while, which was great because, as I said, we were selling them all day long. Open house, offers over asking price, nice and easy. Now you're just having to work a little bit harder on those 3 beds because you've lost probably 50% of the first-time buyers that were looking. So, and I say the same thing to a lot of people at the moment. You've just got, instead of having 30 inquiries on a house and 15 viewings and 10 offers, you've now got 15 inquiries and 5 offers, for example. So all the numbers have just dropped down a little bit, but the prices haven't. Those 5 people are still buying. So until those 5 people stop buying, the prices won't change. And as Andy was sort of saying, if it's a life change, you're going to move regardless. So I think there's still those people moving within the market because they don't want to pay the extortionate rent.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So what tips would we give everyone that's listening now or later on for kind of selling in winter months? Because it's all well and good selling in the summer months, but in the winter months, things are a little bit different. I can see over Mike's left shoulder, he's got a lovely candle burning there. Very ambient setting, actually, for your live. Yeah, congratulations on that. What tips would you give, Michael, to your sellers? And what flavour candle is that as well? Let's find out.
That's a chocolate smelling candle.
Oh, delightful. Very nice.
Well, the aroma as well. One thing I haven't done yet is turn the heating on. So if you're selling a house, make sure your house is warm. That's one thing I haven't done. But yeah, just setting the mood. Neil's got a nice bit of lighting as well behind him. Very nice. Just making it feel warm and cozy.
Warm and cozy. It's first impressions count. We always talk about that. In the summer months, we talk about making sure the front garden, you've got some nice fresh flowers in there and it's looking colourful. The door is nice and cobweb free and the doormat's fresh and new. And Everything's just looking good, maybe jet wash to drive. In the winter months, internally, you want people to move in and feel like it's a home. Chocolate flavored candle maybe burning in the background to really set the tone would be lovely. Andy, what other tips would you give people? What about kind of people that want to see the garden in the dark and things like that? It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, so make sure the lighting's good. If you've got lights in the garden, I mean, make sure they work, obviously. But be flexible with when you can view. This is both for seller and buyer. If a seller can only accommodate viewings in the evening, for example, when they're back from work, and same for a buyer, you're going to come around and view it during the light anyway, because you're going to say to me, I can't offer until I see it in the light. So just come around in the light. It just eradicates the waste of time viewing in the evening, basically. So yeah, that would be my number one advice, is be as flexible as you can with times. If you're hot to trot and looking to buy, speak to your boss, if you've got one, and say, look, I need to view properties during the day. Can we accommodate this in some capacity? And go out and do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, fantastic. If you've got flexible work to go and do that, brilliant. I've never seen an estate agent take a torch on a viewing, but hey, maybe a torch on a viewing is a good idea for the agent. If you've got a really powerful torch, some of those dog walking torches these days they're very bright. I've had one in the eye a couple of times running, and yeah, you could light up a whole long garden, Victorian garden even. What about you, Neil? Any other tips for winter selling months for sellers?
Yeah, definitely. Funnily enough, I've been creating a video with some tips on this to go out in the next few days. But yeah, similar to what you guys said about lighting. Interestingly, I was doing an open house the other evening and it started to get dark. And I found a switch for the outside lights, which turned all these stunning lights up in the borders, and the garden looked awesome. But if you have that sort of setup, let the estate agent know so that you can make it look as awesome as possible. Doormats are quite important. Like you said, make sure everything's clean and tidy at the front. But if it's wet, have a doormat on the inside as well, so people don't feel bad walking in and having wet feet as they walk through. And just make sure you haven't got jackets lying around. Having jackets all over the place or boots all over the place as you walk in, again, it's that first impression.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, depending on what the parking scenario is, but having parking available for someone, especially if it's raining, is a real valid thing to just not sort of start the viewing with frustration of being, torrentially drenched like sometimes you can do in the UK. I think that's probably something which would definitely help, is if you can keep the parking free, especially if it's raining. That would be my tips as well. So Andy, talk to us about Slough. What's your expectations for 2023 with Slough? What are you kind of thinking may happen? I mean, as we've said, base rate's now 3%. Last week we had the live mortgage updates with Dave, and he was mentioning about rates starting to fall. We've spoken about that as well, which is great. But what would be kind of your take on Slough? What's up and coming in Slough? What's your expectations? Up, down, level? What are you thinking?
I think a lot of agents or a lot of properties are going to get left behind because there is some seriously inflated prices on the market. So I think whereas before, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you could kind of maybe get away with it. The buyers they're too switched on now. There's not enough competition to go out and view something that's overpriced. So I think there'll be a lot of stagnant properties. But like I think Neil touched on, if it's priced right, it's still selling. I would have said perhaps entry-level properties are struggling, but again, if they're priced right, you get the interest. I took on that auction property. That's had viewings, which I was kind of maybe a bit skeptical about with auctions, but that's had activity. I've took a property off from another agent in Stoke Poges. That's had activity. So, if it's marketed right and priced right, there's still buyers out there. It's just a case of sellers need to be perhaps a bit more honest with the valuation of their property, and it's worth what someone's prepared to pay as opposed to what you want to achieve for it.
Yeah. So we've got a question here from Lauren and Ryan, and thanks for that, Andy. What's your views on the amount of buyers that are wanting to view properties? So sort of High Wycombe direction where you are, Mike, What are you finding at the moment with the amount of buyers that are wanting to view? You mentioned obviously it's down, prices have dropped, but are there still lots of buyers out there, or is it just a case of the buyers have stopped? Or are they still there? Is there just less of them? What?
Less of them. 50%, I'd say. And I'm only using that. The example I've got is just an open house that I had on Saturday, just gone. Whereas in the summer and the start of the year, an open house would have had 25, 30 people. This open house only had 10.
Do you remember though, Mike, sometimes open houses sometimes it would just be one viewing, sort of over the years, you book an you book that Saturday open house and say to the seller, we're going to do the marketing, and maybe back then the agents would just slap it on Rightmove and hope for calls. But we would set an open house time, but actually there was only like one or two people that looked at it. And the open house was almost a price setter. It was like, right, if we get a load of interest, we're in the right place. If we don't, then we've got to review things after. So it's still not quite that level, is it? I mean, if we're getting an open house, we will have activity and people through the door, right?
Yeah, still had activity. The example is that I had one asking price offer and somebody else who offered 10% less, 50 grand under, because the market's going to drop. That type of buyer. But somebody else has offered the asking price on it. And I think, well, here anyway, sort of around High Wycombe and the villages, I think the sort of the first time buyers in the lower part of the market, I think is still moving. It's the other end, it's the higher end of the market. It's all the million and above. That's the market here anyway that I'm seeing that isn't moving. And that's the market that's moved like 8%. That's what I'm seeing here.
It's a funny one because I think different markets have experienced slowdowns in different areas, in different price bands. And around kind of this area where I am, I live in Crowthorne, and you've got Crowthorne, Sandhurst, Bracknell, Wokingham, sort of in that little triangle. There's kind of 650 to 750 market has been the market which has probably been the slowest market, or not necessarily the slowest, but had the biggest sort of drop in price, and they had the biggest hike in price over summer. So I think that's quite interesting. I'm sure it's not Neil asking this because he's on the call, but it might be Dan asking this. It's a suggestion in reality, probably a loaded question slightly for his colleague here, Neil. But yeah, do you think it's a summer slowdown for Christmas? And I can't say that without thinking of the ice shop in Frozen, but there we go. Big summer. Is that one that goes? Yeah. But yeah, what do you think? Slow down for Christmas, Neil?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier actually, because we're nearly halfway through November, dare I say it, already, and I know we say this a lot, but everything's this year's gone so quick, and straight away this month's gone so quick, and you're halfway through November. But historically, that first week of December is your last real chance. And don't get me wrong, I've worked on Christmas Day before and sold houses on Christmas Eve before and all sorts, but there's less activity because people do just want to put their feet up. Some sellers don't want viewings while the house is full of toys and Christmas trees and decorations and whatnot. But I think some people are kind of just taking a step back. So we're probably noticing it a bit more. I think all four of us have said the inquiries and the numbers of the activity has slowed down. So I think we're just noticing it a little bit earlier and a little bit more than ever. And it was quite chaotic in comparison to last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What do you reckon, Andy? Sort of just a little bit of a change of seasons, change of lay of the land, and things probably just going to level a little bit further.
Yeah, I think what Neil said's right. It's just a slightly early Christmas kind of lull. I think you listen to the radios and that, and they're already talking about Christmas and winding down, and you've got your decorations up yet, and all of this sort of stuff. And I just think it's early, and I just wonder if people are in that kind of Christmas mode already, and just I'll park it here and deal with it in the new year.
Yeah. I'm quite happy to put the Christmas tree up in the next week or so, if I'm honest. I don't mind. I don't know. I'm not normally like that, but this year I'm not too fussed. Actually, I don't mind. I'm sort of feeling warm and fuzzy and ready for it. Let's talk. Let's talk about us a little bit. We don't do that too much on this call, but let's talk about video and social media marketing. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because I think people need to be aware that to get the best price for your home next year, it won't be as easy as it has been for the last 2 years. So you need all of the whistles and bells. You need all of the tools, all the opportunities around a marketing campaign that's bespoke for you. And in the world we live in today, video and social media marketing is a big part of that. It's not a part of the service for every agent out there. And I'm not going to talk about them or name names because it's not my place to do it. But what I am going to talk about is your individual property and how to maximize the eyeballs that are looking at that property. And we do a couple of things differently. Michael, how have you found the reaction to your video and the social media presence for your sellers? Is it something which people enjoy looking at your properties and they mention it, the videos, or are they kind of just looking at photos and the floor plan? And is there anything else that we do with the marketing that you think sellers really benefit from and really buyers gain trust and I guess that immersive part of moving? You know, what's your take on that?
Lots of questions. Well, the video side of things, I think gets a great response from buyers and sellers alike. You can show a property off so much better with a video than you can just with the camera. And I also believe that buyers, once they've watched the video, it makes sense, because I think a lot of people think on a photograph you've stretched the picture, you've used the wide, the fish-eyed lens, and if it's a camera or a drone flying overhead, I think people just believe it a lot more, which helps massively.
Yeah,
and these videos also introduce us to people, so when you do meet buyers for the first time, they've already seen you, if that makes sense. They've already know who you are. They've seen you. Yeah, I think it helps. It starts on the front foot then.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's really important. I think with the video, you can talk about the area. You can show what things look like, not just a caption. You can show the whole room. You can show from a drone perspective what sits around the property. Obviously, from a location point of view, normally we're presenting down the street or in front of the property as well. So you get a lay of the land rather than just the perfect front shot photo. And that gives trust. But I also think the engagement, the experience, that immersive kind of experience for a buyer, it gives them much more of a perspective of what they're going to look at. And it probably stops a lot of time wasted viewings, I would say, as well, Neil. I know you're big on timekeeping for buyers and punctuality from their perspective, because it's important. Time is money. But the video helps with that for the seller. It helps the seller not have so many no-shows, which is a big frustration for any seller, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's a topic, because I had, you might hear the dog bark in a second, but I had a valuation just this afternoon where, interestingly enough, the client actually worked for 4 different estate agents, very well-known estate agents around here, but she's followed Dan and I's page from the start and seen us grow in just over 2 years. And she was so complimentary of the videos, and it was her that said, I bet you eliminate a lot of time wasters from it. So we get great amount of feedback from buyers that pretty much every viewing, they're like, seen your video, I love your viewing, I love your video, I like what you guys are doing. You can see how different we are to the other estate agents, which I think is, everyone uses the word refreshing. Can I say it? Refreshing. Which we are to buyers and sellers. And let's face it, we're here to work for and with our sellers, but it benefits the buyers at the same time because it looks a lot better and it's a lot more engaging. And as the guys just touched on, it's all realism. You can't hide from the video side of it.
Yeah, totally agree. Andy, what about social media? Because part of the process is sometimes sellers want their property on the market instantly. Sometimes people want to have a little bit of time before they have viewings, but they would like people to know it's coming to the market. live video, and we've got our own hashtag called Beat the Portals, which does get replicated in other areas, but it was initially created by us. In fact, Neil, I think, was the creator of that hashtag. That gives the seller the ability to know that the second they give you the commitment, you can walk outside and show their property to hundreds, or if you share it into the local groups, thousands of potential buyers, without the intrusive nature of internal photos and viewings. That's a good starting point, isn't it, for the way that a property could be launched, I think.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to, I suppose, soft launch, or like you say, just market straight away. Sign paperwork, thanks very much. Right, let's crack on with marketing. Outside, live video, straight to our Facebook pages, which is in theory our database, and then out to the greater audience on the groups. And I think it's the old cliche of, the database. Well, a database in theory is a list of buyers that haven't bought, so they're cold buyers. Whereas someone following your social media page is someone actively looking in that area. So it's sort of a different take on it. But yeah, instant marketing. But then also going back to what you said, if it takes a week or 2 weeks to launch a property, if that's what the vendor wants, then the social media side of it gives you that off-market opportunity to gauge the price point, perhaps, or get someone in that will pay slightly more because it's not on the open market and they're not going to get outbid, etc.
Yeah. No, that's a point that I was going to mention, that you beat me to the punch. Totally agree. Social media gives you the ability to soft launch. And if you're unsure about the marketing price, you can test it with social media to find out the interaction before you put it on Rightmove. And one of the things with it going on Rightmove is once that's launched, the date is locked in. And once the date is locked in, it's in there unless you reduce it. And then it shows a reduction. So it's much better to use social media, video marketing, live marketing, to test the water than testing it on the portals, because in reality the launch is very important in this world. No, great points there, chaps. So before we wrap up this evening, Michael, happy with the England squad? Anyone that you would sub out and sub in?
Tamori should be there. I don't know why he's not there.
And who would you sub out? Maguire?
Either that or Trent. I think they're both on the same level now.
Yeah, maybe picked on reputation, right?
Yeah.
Andrew, sub out, sub in, or are you totally happy?
Difficult decision. I think we've only got one actual left back in the squad. I know Trippier can play there, but perhaps we're missing a left back. But then I guess there's a lack of choice at left back. But I did see Ryan Sessegnong's name chucked about. As a Tottenham fan, he's not good enough for the England squad, but there's options there. And I think another option up front, Abraham or Tony, would have been ideal. But then you've only got a certain amount of players to pick from. But I'll put it out there. Mason Mount shouldn't be in there.
Outrageous statement.
Of course he should be.
Watch him start most games. I would have Ivan Toney for Rashford in a heartbeat for sure. Yeah. Neil, what about yourself?
I've been out all day, back-to-back appointments, so I haven't even seen the squad. I went to open it as I was walking into an appointment. I didn't even get a chance to have a look, but I'll have a little ganders, and I'm sure I'll give it a little rant later.
TBC. Have you had a good birthday week, Neil?
I have, mate. I have indeed. To be fair, my birthday was on Monday, and it's the first time I've been in bed on my birthday before midnight. So it was.
You're getting older, mate. You're growing up. Well done.
I'm growing up, but yeah, I'm going to make up for it this weekend.
We're not here next week. We are missing a week. Might be the first week we've missed all year, actually. But we've got the group event, which we're going to be setting up some new exciting ideas, plans, services for our clients for next year. So we'll be coming out with all sorts of extra whistles and bells for clients as we continue to innovate. Michael, Andrew, Neil, thank you for joining me this evening. If people are watching and we're not live, comment still, we will reply, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Peace and love.